The closest thing we'll ever have to magic is love. It makes something from nothing, and it finds new ways to change us. Love has found its way into every asset of our lives as long as history has been a thing. Case in point, doing an entire show just about love songs. The oldest written love song discovered to date, the love song for Shu Sin, dates back to approximately 2000 BC, and it so eloquently put how we all feel when we are deep in love. You have captivated me. Let me stand tremblingly before you. And while love is a form of magic, it also has a lot of science behind it. Science which explains the saying, love is blind. Pat Mumby, PhD, co-director of the Loyola Sexual Wellness Clinic, says, "The phrase love is blind is a valid notion. We tend to idealize our partner and see only the things that we want to in the early stages of our relationship. Outsiders may have a much more objective and rational perspective on the partnership than the two people involved do. And really, it's our brain's fault." According to Townsend University psychology professor Jared McGinley, there are a few discrete brain areas that are active and engaged when feeling the emotion of love, specifically the anterior lobe of our brain. Our posterior lobe is also engaged when releasing oxytocin, often called the love hormone. But oxytocin is not alone in helping us feel love. According to Professor Stephen Phelps, a behavioral neurobiologist, there are 3 areas in the brain that act as a magic trilogy, interacting with 3 key hormones: dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin. All organisms have these hormones, and they have different functions, but it is the parts of our brain that they interact with that make them important. These 3 regions of the brain being the ventral tegmental area, VTA, which releases dopamine. The nucleus accumbens, NA, contains many oxytocin receptors, and the ventral pallidum, VP, contains many vasopressin receptors. These are all interlinked reward systems, which fire up in response to both drugs and the hormones that are associated with love. There's this beautifully timed synergistic relationship between hormones that allows these stages to progress, says Professor Sue Carter, a biologist in the field of social bonding in love, and the bond that these hormones have with each other shockingly makes us stronger. In 2019, researchers found that of 102 people, those that had their romantic partners present appeared to experience less distress or physical pain when submerging their hand in ice-cold water than that of participants without a partner present. Those that came alone but did have a partner, upon drawing on memories of their partners, showed fewer signs of stress. Romantic love is an obsession. It possesses you, Dr. Helen Fisher, anthropologist and author of Why We Love, said in a TED Talk about the brain and love. You can't stop thinking about another human being. Romantic love is one of the most addictive substances on earth, and when it comes to a song that captures perfectly just how magical love is, none hit harder than the 1976 hit song by Electric Light Orchestra, Strange Magic. Hello, and welcome on back to Heard in a Love Song, the show where we take a trip to the past to discover the history of a love song we all know and love. This week, we are taking a look into one of the songs that I love most, a song that, to me, sounds like what love feels like, Strange Magic by Electric Light Orchestra.
Let me introduce you to Jeff Lynne.
Hello there.
We start our story on December 30th, 1947, in Shard End, Birmingham, in England, about 120 miles north of London. That is where and when we meet up with Philip and Nancy Lynne, 2 middle-class workers who just brought into the world a baby boy named Jeffrey Lynne. While in primary school, Jeff, by means of his parents, was introduced to country, Motown, and rock and roll, with artists like Chuck Berry, Duane Eddy, Hank Marvin and the Shadows, the Beach Boys, Buddy Holly, which if you missed that episode, the link will be in the description, the Ronettes, the Righteous Brothers, the Chiffons, Johnny Cash, the Everly Brothers, Ritchie Valens, which if you missed that episode, link will also be below, the Platters, the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Al Green, the Kinks, the Zombies, Little Richard, Carl Perkins, and Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
While it was his grandparents that were able to help teach young Jeff music, it was his father that taught him how to carry a tune. With Jeff recalling to Rockseller magazine, he knew every classical piece of music there is. He'd say, "That's the third movement of so-and-so trumpet thingy." And I'd be like, "How the hell do you know that?" And he'd say, "'Cause I know them all." And he did. I never knew many of the classical pieces. I knew just a few. Debussy is probably my favorite classical composer, although I like a lot of the other classical composers too, but I don't know them like my dad did. He had them just cataloged in his mind. So it did all come through my dad, who was a musical person. In fact, he showed me what harmony was when I was only about 5 years old. We were walking down the street, and he was taking me to where he was working, doing a job for somebody, laying slabs, flagstone, in a garden. As we walked past this building site, we came up to a big concrete pipe, probably about a 5-foot diameter. He said, "I'll show you something. Come and look at this." And he stuck his head in the pipe, and he goes, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and it echoed into this great big chord. And I went, "Wow, that's fantastic." So he said, "Here, have a go." My voice hadn't broke yet, and I went, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and I was like, wow, it's a bloody choir. And so he taught me the major scale and how to do harmony in one little pipe lesson. Who would have thought singing down a pipe would be a great education in and of itself? But it was. As he found himself transferred to the strict all-boys school, Alderley Boys Secondary, he also found himself being brought to many concerts by his father. One of extreme note was the first concert they went to. He was 13. It was at the Birmingham Town Hall, and the headliner was Del Shannon. He was blown away, but also a bit confused. With him telling Goldmine magazine, I'd never heard a live group until then. I couldn't understand why the drums sounded like tin cans. They sounded peculiar. Of course, on the record it didn't sound like that, and it took me a while to get used to the real sound of cymbals. It was a notable moment in his life for sure, but in 1961, when he was 14, he heard a song that would change the direction of his life forever. That song being Only the Lonely by Roy Orbison. The Beatles were also taking off at this time, but after hearing Love Me Do, Jeff was not impressed, although they would eventually win him over with Please Please Me. About a year later, while hanging out with a friend, he found a peculiar item in the friend's wardrobe, a plastic one-string guitar adorned with a sticker of Elvis Presley.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
After some convincing, he was able to borrow that guitar, and on it, he spent his time learning songs by Elvis and Hank Marvin and the Shadows, all on one string, with him recalling, "It was really difficult learning how to play all those songs on one string because you had to start in the right place, or you couldn't get to the last final note. I used to play every night." Knowing his budding interest in music, and seeing his frenzied, frustrated son playing on a cheap children's guitar, his father came home one night, surprising him with a Spanish guitar. In that interview with Goldmine, he recalled, "It had steel strings, and it was tough as hell to play. You needed a clamp to hold your hand down on the fretboard. It had massive action, probably half an inch off the neck at the 12th fret, but I loved playing so much. I learned how to play on that guitar, and funny about that guitar, I've still got it. And it cost £2 when he got it for me. I had it fixed by Danny Farrington, the famous guitar luthier, and it cost me $2,000 to get it playable. It was only a £2 guitar. Once I had that guitar, I said, that's it for me, mate. I'm set now. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life." In 1963, at the age of 15, he decided that he knew exactly what he wanted from life, that of the life of a rock and roll star. So he dropped out of school, much to his mother's dismay, as she wanted him to find work as a journalist, and formed his first band with friends Robert Reeder and David Walsh. Using little more than Spanish guitars and cheap electrical instruments, they called themselves the Rockin' Hellcats, eventually renaming the group the Handicaps, which was quickly changed to the Handicaps to avoid offending those with a disability. The Handicaps would rehearse at the Shard End Community Center, and it was there that David Walsh's father got them their first gig to play at a dance for which the band was paid the sum of £5. The Handicaps ended up being so well received that they ended up playing there every Friday. From there they started to play more gigs around Birmingham, including weekly at the Regal Cinema in Handsworth, where they played sets between the Saturday matinee film screenings. In 1964, Robert Redder and David Walsh left the band, so Jeff brought in replacements, Kevin Kex Gorin on drums, and Dave Merrick as bass guitarist, with John Curtin coming in as vocalist. By the end of 1964, despite winning second place at the local competition for Band of the Year, Jeff Lynne decided that he had musical ambitions that were far beyond what the Handicaps could provide, with a longing to find his place with an established band. It was this goal that led Jeff to depart for a well-known local group called the Chads, as a replacement for their departing lead guitarist, Mick Adkins. Sometime in or after 1965, Jeff acquired his first tangible item of studio recording equipment, a Bang & Olufsen Beocore 2000 Deluxe, which was a stereo reel-to-reel tape recorder. This allowed multi-tracking between left and right channels. With him recalling to Goldmine, "I was looking for some way to make demos of my songs. My friend's dad owned a hi-fi shop in Birmingham, and he asked his dad if there was any machines you could record on and bounce one track to another. He said, yes, I have the best one, a B&O 2000 Deluxe. It was a dead posh little tape machine then. It cost 120 guineas. I had to pay for it on the drip because I wasn't old enough to sign off on it. I wasn't 21 yet." In 1966, Jeff, always itching for bigger and better opportunities, joined the lineup of the Night Riders as guitar guitarist, having responded to an advertisement in the Birmingham Evening Mail. His talent was quickly noticed, and he was made the Night Riders' lead guitarist and main songwriter. In order to showcase Jeff's vocal and guitar skills, as well as his growing cache of earwormy Beatlesque songs, the group changed its name to the Idle Race. In 1969, Jeff Lynne received an offer from former Night Rider Roy Wood to replace Trevor Burton in his band The Move. However, he declined with the hopes that he could steer the Idle Race to commercial success. By 1970, that commercial success was nowhere in sight, so Jeff decided that the best move for him to make was to leave the Idle Race, which was perfect timing as yet another member had left The Move, thus freeing up a spot for him. The Move had recently undergone radical changes in personnel. It was down to 2 members, Roy Wood and drummer Bev Bevan. Jeff was eager to join, but not merely to become part of a more successful band, rather he was interested in Roy Wood's conception of a fully electric rock band paired with a classical string section.
The group is fantastic and you really like them, and their concerts are doing great and their record is a real smash. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back the Electric Light Orchestra.
Jeff Lynne contributed a handful of songs to the Move's last 2 albums, including the number 7 hit, Brontosaurus. At the same time, with Roy Wood and Bev Bevan, Jeff was building a band that was formed around the fusion of rock and classical music, calling the project the Electric Light Orchestra, with the original idea of both bands existing in tandem. Their idea was to form a 10-piece ensemble with cellos, violins, French horns, etc., and play symphonic rock, with Roy saying, "I suppose that the Electric Light Orchestra is meant to pick up where I Am the Walrus left off, and to present it on stage." On July 12, 1970, when Roy Wood added multiple cellos to a penned song intended to be a Move B-side, their new concept became a reality, and 10538 Overture became the first song by Electric Light Orchestra. The original plan was to end the Move following the release of the Looking On album at the end of 1970, crossing over to the new unit in the new year. But to help finance the fledgling band, one further Move album, Message from the Country, was also recorded during the lengthy ELO recording sessions and released in mid-1971. ELO's debut album, The Electric Light Orchestra, was released in December 1971, with a lineup of Roy Wood and Jeff Lynne on vocals, Bev Bevan on drums, Bill Hunt on keyboards and French horn, Andy Craig, Hugh McDowell, and Mike Edwards on cello, Wilfred Gibson on violin, and Richard Tandy on bass. It was released in the United States in March 1972 as No Answer. The name was chosen after a record company's secretary had tried to ring the UK company to get the name of the album. They were unavailable, so she left a note reading No Answer. 10538 Overture became a UK top 10 hit. With both bands' albums in the stores simultaneously, The Move and ELO both made TV appearances during this time. However, tensions, as they so often do, soon surfaced between Roy Wood and Jeff Lynne. With most of the media attention being focused on Roy Wood, differences in musical direction, and a disastrous first live outing, Roy Wood left the band, taking with him Hugh McDowell and Bill Hunt to form a new band called Wizard. Roy Wood is quoted as saying, "I left ELO partly because attention was being focused on me, and not the band as a whole, and partly to save the friendship between Jeff and myself. It got to the point where Jeff wasn't speaking to me much, and I couldn't stand that." It's worth noting that both Roy and Jeff also took issue with how they were being handled by their manager at that time, Don Arden. Despite the music press's predictions that the band would fold without Wood, Jeff Lynne stepped up to lead the band, with Bevan remaining on drums, Richard Tandy switching to Moog synthesizer, Michael D. Albuquerque on bass, Mike Edwards and Colin Walker on cello, and Wilfred Gibson replacing Stephen Woolham on violin. The band released their second album, ELO 2, in early 1973, which produced their second UK top 10 and their first song to chart in the US, an elaborate version of the Chuck Berry classic Roll Over Beethoven. After their second album, violinist Wilfred Gibson was dismissed and replaced by Mick Kaminsky. They wasted no time at all in working on and recording their third album, On the Third Day. On the Third Day saw Mike Edwards playing all the cello parts due to Colin Walker leaving the band. Released in November of 1973, On the Third Day had 2 now extremely popular songs, Showdown and Ma 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 Bell. While Showdown was a minor hit, it caught the attention of John Lennon, who was so impressed that he anointed ELO son of the Beatles in an interview with a New York radio DJ. Lynne felt empowered, but that feeling of elation wouldn't last long. His father, the very blunt, no-nonsense Philip Lynne, having listened to On the Third Day, said, "Son, this is the third album you have released with Electric Light Orchestra, and you still have not had a breakthrough. Do you know what you're doing wrong?" A stunned Jeff Lynne could only say, "No? Your songs have no tune. You're not making any songs that are hummable, songs that people can whistle, songs that people will remember." While initially that biting criticism hurt Jeff, he would later grow to appreciate his father's advice. But at that time, he felt there were plenty of hooks and very clever arrangements in these songs, which were being outwardly dismissed by his father because people could not hum or whistle along to them. So, like all the best pieces of art, Jeff, purely out of spite, set forth to prove his father wrong. In 1974, Jeff hired conductor Lewis Clark, and he began working on their next LP, El Dorado, a symphony by the Electric Light Orchestra. El Dorado was envisioned as a concept album, of which Jeff Lynne conceived the storyline before he wrote any of the music. The plot follows a character who journeys into a fantasy world via dreams to escape the disillusionment of his mundane reality. The first song written for El Dorado was born out of spite for his father's harsh critique, Can't Get It Out of My Head, which became their first top 10 hit in the States, peaking at number 9. It was a dreamy, most definitely hum-alongable tune about the bittersweet story of a man who has big dreams about a life with a woman he knows he can never have, and about ambitions he knows will never come to fruition. With Jeff telling VH1 storytellers, it's about a guy in a dream who sees this vision of loveliness and wakes up to find he's actually a clerk working in a bank, and he hasn't got any chance of getting her or doing all these wonderful things that he thought he was going to do. Its success helped propel El Dorado to becoming ELO's first gold album, proving decidedly to his father that he could in fact write a hit tune. My second favorite song on the album, the titular El Dorado, had to have inspired the band Muse in some capacity. Just listen to this run here and tell me what you think in the comments. After the release of El Dorado, bassist and vocalist Kelly Grocott and cellist Melvin Gale joined, replacing Michael D. Albuquerque and Mike Edwards respectively. The newfound success in America led to a monumental amount of touring in the US. Their tour manager came about by means of nepotism, as she was Don Arden's daughter, Sharon, who was dating and in the following decade would later marry Ozzy Osbourne. Touring with ELO was like running an old age pensioners club, she would say. All they wanted to do was sit in their rooms doing their knitting. I was so bored I would drink to amuse myself. When American Express called Don Arden to question the $150,000 spending spree on clothes, booze, and jewelry, Don thought ELO had been abusing the company credit card, but it was Sharon. Following the conclusion of El Dorado's European leg of the tour, the band began recording the new album at Musicland Studios in Munich, Germany. Some huge artists have recorded at Musicland, including Queen, The Rolling Stones, Donna Summer, Billy Squier, Deep Purple, Rainbow, Iron Maiden, and Elton John. Jeff wanted to move towards more tunes that would be memorable and hummable, rather than the usual progressive rock style of the group's first 3 albums and the straight symphonic sound of El Dorado. So new measures were implemented to ensure a more complex but satisfying sound, such as hiring backing female vocalist Ellie Greenwich, who you'll recall from the Leader of the Pack episode wrote or co-wrote as well as hiring Susan Collins, Nancy O'Neill, and Marge Raymond, all 4 of which you can hear singing along with a choir and the band's string trio of Mick Kaminsky, Hugh McDowell, and Melvin Gale mixed into the backing 30-piece string section. The album that they conjured up was released in 1975 with the title Face the Music. It was a song that Jeff Lynne wrote and composed in 6 minutes that gave them their first international hit, Evil Woman, which charted at number 10 in the UK, the US, and Ireland, number 9 in New Zealand, and number 6 in Canada, hitting platinum status in the US and silver in the UK. But it's the second single that we're here to talk about. Released as the second single from Face the Music and the 6th track on the album itself, Strange Magic is truly something else. The opening guitar lick, which is an otherworldly magical set of chords, is provided courtesy of Richard Tandy, who Jeff had somehow persuaded to take his hands off various keyboards and for one instance in music history, grab a guitar and start off one of the best songs of all time with a lonely, longing cry. Of course, we are met with all the ELO staples, strings, heavy drums, and vocal harmonies that are unmatched, which fits perfectly for a song about a love that leaves one transfixed. And it bewitched their fans as well, and fans of music in general, with it reaching number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and hitting gold status in the US for over 500,000 copies sold. It even sparked the name for a 2015 children's fantasy movie, Strange Magic, with the song being performed in the movie by Alan Cumming and Evan Rachel Wood. Strange Magic comes in at 95 beats per minute. There are a few songs to me that sound how love feels. And of course, you fly so high, I get it. Strange magic. It's floaty, it's beautiful, and Jeff Lynne's voice is unwavering in his want for a love that can be only explained as magic. And like I said in the beginning, love is the closest thing we have to magic, and ELO shows just how magical love can be. This week's Love Homework is another song about loving like no other, Swans by The Format.
We are not swans.
And that's it, the end of another love song history lesson. If you like what you learned, and you'd like to continue learning, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a like below, and join me again next week for the history of a love song we all know and love. Until next time, remember to have sweet dreams, and remember, you heard it in a love song.